Alright, well, it's my first time doing one of these face-to-face videos, and it's gonna feel a little weird. I don't like looking at myself, and I don't like speaking in front of stuff, so anyway, what I want to talk about are cheat meals and why, if you're dieting and dieting hard, you need them and why they are useful. A lot of people think cheat meals are just a relief and they're nice and fun break from dieting, which they are. It's a side benefit, and then but people are like, oh, as I get closer to show, I cut cheat meals out, like they're going to be more hardcore and fight their body harder and harder. And you can tell in this mentality, people have like cheat meals that they set them back, and they're going to stop having these cheat meals because they're going to have to stop having these setbacks and just push through it. But they're a tool and they're for a purpose, and then they're not just for the psychological relief, and I'm going to explain why they're useful. Other notable people have covered this, like John Meadows and Skip from Skip. Team Skip has his own version of his skip loading, which is a carb refeed on once a week. So we're going to explain what happens in the body and what fights your fat loss, and why and how cheat meals help set you up for further fat loss instead of actually setting you back. So we'll start with as you get into a diet, as you get leaner and leaner and more into it, a lot of negative things start happening in the body to prevent fat loss, because the body's not meant to be super lean, and in an evolutionary standpoint, being lean and having lots of muscle is a it's a liability for survival. You want to have fat in an evolutionary standpoint for times of fasting or the survival situation or whatever. And muscle muscle is also compromised because it's so energy consuming that having excess muscle like a bodybuilder does is not beneficial. So as you get leaner and leaner, the body's like, no, we don't want to do this, so we're going to fight and stop fat loss. And one of the main mechanisms that gets released is becoming known more as like the granddaddy control of everything else, is a hormone called leptin. Leptin it's a satiety hormone. It signals satiety. It signals when you're full, like satiated. It's opposite of ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone. And leptin fluctuates mainly based off of two things: your current body composition, how much fat and stuff you're holding, and like how fed you are, how much food you're eating and intaking, how much energy you're intaking. It's produced in the fat cells. So it's produced in the fat cells. So being that this is an important hormone, it's another reason why fat has been becoming more accepted as an endocrine system than just energy storage tissue. There's other things that fat cells have a role in when it comes to endocrine, such as like high amounts of aromatase enzymes are held in there, which are enzymes that convert things like testosterone into estrogen, and called aromatization. Anyway, so that's like one reason why fat is becoming more known as an endocrine system than just energy storage tissue. So as you're dieting and you're getting leaner and you're getting leaner, your body senses this, and leptin will start to decrease, and ghrelin will increase, and you will start to get more hungry. And as leptin increases, it will slow down energy expenditure and influence you to eat more. So this sets you up for weight gain, fat gain. If you were to listen to your body and go off of instinct, you would eat more because your body doesn't like to see all this fat dropping. So this is what happens when leptin decreases. And other ways it decrease energy expenditure and block fat loss and set you up for fat gain potentially, are its effects on thyroid, cortisol, and even insulin levels and insulin sensitivity. The effect on thyroid, I'll post some of my my sources or where I got this information, but it's been correlated that reduced leptin levels decrease thyroid releasing hormone, which is in the hypothalamus, which goes to the pituitary, signals thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone goes to the thyroid and stimulates the release of T4 and T3, which are your thyroid hormones. And as you probably know, thyroid is your main controller of metabolism. Metabolism being anabolic, catabolic, both, breaking up and building down of tissue. So in this case, fat. Let's see what else I want to go over. Just looking at my notes, just make sure I don't forget anything. So yeah, all that's obviously those are all negatives to fat loss. If your thyroid is slowing down because leptin is decreasing, this is a negative, and it's going to slow down your productivity for fat loss. Also correlated is an increase in cortisol. So there's most of the studies are show an inverse relationship to leptin and cortisol. Leptin's down, which is bad. This raises cortisol, or cortisol is high. And I'll post a study. There's actually some of these studies I found that leptin has a direct influence on the adrenals of the kidney where cortisol is produced, which is why one of the reasons why cortisol increases. I mean, there's a lot of other factors too. The stress of dieting, this is all correlated, stress of dieting, but high cardio workout or high intensity workouts also increase cortisol. So doing them frequently, as we are in prep, will also have an effect on keeping cortisol elevated. Because cortisol is a stress hormone, it's needed, but it needs not to be chronically elevated. I'll explain what cortisol is. So it's your stress hormone. It's influenced based off of any type of stress, physical, emotional, psychological, environmental stresses have an effect on cortisol. Cortisol is catabolic, so this is not good for muscle growth. In acute circumstances, it is necessary for fat loss, but you don't want chronic elevation of cortisol. It does increase insulin resistance, which is detrimental to fat loss and muscle gain. Chronic elevation of cortisol can lead to fat gain, especially in the abdominal area. Even stimulants, caffeine, you know, ephedrine, whatever, increased cortisol. Like I said, leptin activity, or leptin directly inhibits cortisol. It's inversely related. It will chronically elevated cortisol also increase visceral fat, meaning the fat around your organs, not the stuff that you can grab on your belly, but inside within your organs. It decreases insulin sensitivity by inhibiting glucose uptake, by messing with GLUT4, which is a glucose transport for glucose into the cell. Too much cortisol will inhibit, you know, T4, T3. Again, leptin. The thing is, you'll find that all of these are interrelated, and that's the complexity of the body. So, leptin will have an effect on thyroid. Leptin increases cortisol. Cortisol has an effect on thyroid by the conversion of thyroid hormone T4 to T3, because T3 is the more active version of the thyroid hormone that will have its effect on cellular metabolism and whatnot. Some cortisol is needed to sensitize the T3 receptors, but too much will inhibit the T4 to T3 conversion, decreasing the effect of thyroid hormone, and hence decreasing your ability to lose fat. Also, I guess that would also be another contributor. I just now thought of this, of glucose uptake, because T3 is T3 has a high it has a lot of responsibility for glucose uptake. So less T3, less ability to use glucose. So those are the negatives associated with both elevated leptin, elevated cortisol, decreased thyroid. And like I kind of already mentioned, all of these have an effect on insulin. Insulin is it's a nutrient shuttling hormone. It shuttles aminos, carbohydrates into muscle cells. It can also contribute to fat gain too, because along with insulin spike, lipoprotein lipase becomes elevated when insulin is elevated. That's a kind of like a shuttle protein enzyme for fat into fat cells. And then you want to be insulin receptive, because, like I said, insulin shuttles nutrients, which can be debated as anabolic, but at the very least it's anti-catabolic, meaning prevent muscle breakdown, which spares protein, and then so like I said, sensitivity to insulin can be decreased by cortisol. So as you see, all these things are interconnected. We show this little diagram, kind of like a flow chart of how they're all connected. So you got leptin. Leptin's decreased, which decreases thyroid. Leptin's decreased, increases cortisol, which decreases thyroid. Leptin also has a direct influence of itself on thyroid. So basically, when all the negatives happen, they all happen together. They're all intertwined, interconnected. And this happens with, the whole point of this, it happens with extreme dieting, fat loss, and pushing the body to the limit. So you keep fighting this, it's only going to get worse and worse, harder and harder to lose weight. You could lose fat, but if you keep pushing it, you might be able to keep losing some fat, but you're going to lose a lot of size. You're going to lose your muscle mass, which is for bodybuilding or anybody in the physique trying to build the optimal physique. This is not what you want. So, what are ways to avoid this negative cascade? So, like I said, that we're beginning to start with leptin. Leptin is influenced by calorie intake, primarily of the presence of glucose or insulin. One of the great ways to avoid this is with carb cycling. Usually with low-cal diets, we also do low carb diets. So achieving low calories through low carbs is kind of like a double negative. And with carb cycling, you have intermittent high carb days, which will help kind of keep the negatives of leptin, T3, cortisol at bay throughout the week as you do ebb and flow of high and low carb, medium carb days. Being that you're still, even if it's a high carb day, you're still in a caloric deficit, which is still contributing to these negatives. So eventually you're going to need a high caloric intake, high carb day, or what we call a carb refeed, carb load. Cheat meals help, being that most of the, like I said, most of this stuff is related to carbohydrate intake. Like this study that says carbohydrate overfeeding increased plasma leptin concentrations by 28% and a 24-hour energy expenditure by 7%. So carbohydrate overfeeding, but not fat overfeeding, increases energy expenditure and leptin concentration. So meaning overeating, cheat meal, like you have your normal meals, and then a cheat meal, a carb refeed is a great surplus of what you're normally intaking. You can see the benefits, bringing leptin back up, and you have an increased energy expenditure, kind of like your metabolism for the next 24 hours also. You'll feel this when you carb load or cheat meal. When you've been dieting, you'll start sweating. You're like, holy crap! I'll sweat through my shirt just from eating all these carbs. So, all these, conservative dieters, so worried about all that. It's like they feel like that one meal is going to go straight and make you lose all your progress. But the meal itself, it requires a massive amount of energy to even process. So anyways, the cheat meals, they help. It's high. Cheat meal typically is like high fat, high carb, higher protein. On top, being that that's more calorie dense with the fats, especially with the fats being over double the calories per gram of protein and carbs. You're going to have a higher caloric intake on a cheat meal than just a high carb meal. But being that because fat is not as correlated to resetting these things, I don't feel like it's the ideal way to kind of stoke the fire of your metabolism, so to speak. With carb cycling, like I learned from Skip, we use highly processed carbs because the faster those carbs digest, the faster they spike your blood sugar. The more increase in insulin, the more increase in blood glucose. These are the things that help reset these mechanisms. Plus, to get 500, 600, 700 carbs in a day with clean carbs is just gut bloating. Like this, here's a study that I have. Daily carbohydrate intake of 7 men with normal weight was limited to 200 to 265 grams per day for 6 days, and then increased to 620 to 700 grams per day for 20 days, which is more than what we use for a refeed. It would just be 1 day. But in the study, while intake of protein, fat, and sodium remained constant, carbohydrate overfeeding increased body weight by 4.5%, which a lot of people when they carb load, like, oh my gosh, I gained this weight, but if you're not experienced or a novice person at understanding diet, weight, stuff like that, every single gram of carb takes in 2.7 grams of water, so it's almost a 1-to-3 ratio. So you take in all those grams, water has to come in to get those carbs into the muscle cell. There's your weight gain right there. It's not like you gained fat. So, the novice, most novice people just look at the scale and whether they go on a diet or trying to gain, they see the weight fluctuate. They feel like they made progress. A lot of you have to account for water, especially if you lose 5 pounds, 6 pounds in 1 week and you get on a diet. Like, oh my God, this diet's great. Water, a lot of water. Because when you expend those carbs too, there goes the water. So the conclusion of the study, that the carbohydrate overfeeding increased body weight by 4.8%, basal oxygen consumption (VO2) increased by 7.4%, and their basal metabolic rate increased by 11.5%. So right there is, proof that the overfeeding with carbohydrates after a limited carbohydrate diet will, increase your metabolism. But we just do it for a day because, we're dieting for a show. And those high carbohydrate days are not going to be suitable for fat loss when it's done continuously. So what we basically, you'll refeed, kind of reset these things, then boom, jump back into your diet hard for the next week or whatever, and then capitalize on the fat loss. These negatives are going to kick back in. Boom, there's your cheat meal again, resets it, and then it's a continuous cyclic operation of this. What else I want to get into? Basically covered, so the carb cycling of cheat meals. Here's some supplements that could help with cortisol and thyroid. I take vitamin C, high doses of vitamin C help with cortisol, regulating cortisol. It's glutamine. It's something new when I was doing my research for this. I didn't know glutamine. There was a study that low plasma levels of glutamine were associated with higher levels of cortisol. Glutamine is the most dominant amino acid in the body. It's like 60% in muscle cells. So this is why we use it a lot anyway in bodybuilding, to help recovery and prevent muscle breakdown. And if you are on a low carb diet or whatever, and your body wants to break down amino acids to produce glycogen, which is called gluconeogenesis. If you have an abundance of glutamine, it's shown that it will, your body will favor glutamine to use for gluconeogenesis, so spare it, which in turn should spare your muscle tissue. There's other herbs and stuff that help with reduce cortisol. Like there's this herb ashwagandha. It's used all across the board for many things. This, and then in my next one, thyroid. I've even seen research when I was doing my research on nootropics, mental cognition enhancement and stuff like that. It's used in there, so that's an herb that I guess that helps. T3 production. Again, vitamin C was on there. That's kind of new for me. I'm guessing it has to do with cortisol, being that if you can reduce cortisol, just like we talked about before, you could help keep thyroid active. Tyrosine helps convert into the conversion into thyroid hormone, and then so does iodine, because T4 and T3 are, I guess, molecules of iodine. Like T3 is triiodothyronine, being that there's three iodines, and then T4 thyroxine, which is actually like 4 iodines. So iodine is critical for thyroid function. So let me try to recap. I know I'm not the best presenter. I try to keep it in a organized, systematic way to present the information so it flowed, so you could visualize in your brain what I'm trying to talk about. So just recap this real quick. So as you're dieting down, getting leaner, leptin decreases because your food intake is low and your caloric intake is low, and so is your body composition. You're leaner. Things that affect leptin. Leptin's down, elevating cortisol, suppressing thyroid, all negatives. Fat loss. You're going to stall. So you're going to stall, and like I said, I believe because this is more carbohydrate mediated. So you diet all week. Sunday, I use Sunday, like Skip does, and I've learned a lot from him in my early days, and I've tried cheat meals and carb loading, but with the information and my experience, carb loading is more effective because, like I said, being as carb mediated, it's going to have a higher influence on resetting, bringing leptin back up. Cortisol is lowered, thyroid function is brought back up. You're now in a good state for fat loss again. So you're back up, boom, jump back into your Monday. You're hitting it hard. You're starting to lose fat again. Again, don't use just a scale. You should be back. You should lose all that water weight, by midweek. So you're back to normal by midweek, and then the rest of the week is just new progress. So as you diet down, lose that, make additional progress. These negatives are going to kick back in again, and that's why as you get towards the end of the week, those negatives kick back in. Boom, refeed, restoke the fire of the metabolism. And actually, as you get leaner and leaner, because as you get leaner, it takes less calories to get lean. You got to just keep dropping your calories, keep getting leaner, keep pushing cardio, this and this. Being that, like I said, leptin is mediated by all this. All these negatives are actually going to kick in faster earlier in the week than when you first start your diet. So when you first start your diet, you might be able to go a few weeks without even cheating because you're not that, just because you're on a diet. A lot of people cry, I'm on a diet, but you're not even pushing the boundaries yet. So you don't even really probably need this in the beginning. But as you get lean and you're killing it, all these negatives might kick back in by day 3. There was a prep I was in. After 3 days, I felt like I couldn't even function. I felt like. So sometimes people need maybe a second cheat meal. I wouldn't do a whole second carb load. Maybe some people would, but an actual additional second cheat meal for the week to help keep these things going. So the leaner you get, you might need that second one. Another benefit to the carb load over a cheat meal is that the carbs are going to refill glycogen stores in the muscles and in the liver, and keeping these stores full, it's going to take a few days to deplete them, but this will, I think, delay the onset of all these negatives of thyroid function and stuff. Where that one cheat meal, it's not going to restore your glycogen stores as much. Another reason why I feel carb loading is more effective. But whether you do a cheat meal or carb load, you want your intake of total calories and carbs to be greater than what you're normally intaking. So if you're doing a single cheat meal, you're probably going to want to do it later in the day. Get all your normal meals, get it later in the day, then have the cheat meal. So you have your normal intake, then boom, cheat meal, increase in calories and carbs and whatnot. Also, if you try to have that cheat meal earlier in the day, especially with the high fat, being that fat slows digestion, it's just going to sit in your stomach. You're going to be full. You probably won't even want to eat for 4+ hours, which is not what you want. So you have that cheat meal and don't eat, and then maybe you finish off your last few meals of the day. You might barely be above your normal intake that your normal diet set at, just because it filled you up all day, but then you didn't eat, and then you just ate your last few meals. So eat all your normal meals basically, and then top it off with a big old fat nasty cheat meal. With the carb loading, usually give yourself a certain amount of the day. The leaner you get, you're gonna need more and more and more. So whether it's a few hours or half a day, I got to the point where I had to load the entire day. Then that's definitely going to put you over your normal intake. So it's not that hard if you're loading for the most of the day, especially getting the simple processed carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, they're all going to, it's the difference between complex and simple, and is how fast it turns into glucose sugar in the body. It's not like your body, it's not like your body is going to turn a sugary carb into fat and a complex carb into something good. And like a lot of people just I don't know, it's just this mentality of good and bad. I need to throw this in there too. I just kind of wanted to clarify what I was meaning. Like, in a normal diet, normal everyday eating, yeah, processed sugar is bad. You don't want it. It can potentially turn to fat more. It's not, it's not what you want during a diet. But there's no molecular difference in what it turns into. It's about how fast it turns into. And during this cheat meal, carb load, we want it fast. just like post-workout, what it fast. Normal everyday diet when you're trying to be consistent, healthy, and everything else. Yeah, complex carbohydrates are what you want. So it's I just kind of wanted to clarify a little bit. A lot of the rules are broken in a depleted state, and some of the rules need to be broken to make new ground, like as far as carb loading, sugary carbs, even post workout and stuff like that. You just gotta know when and where to apply them. So I don't know. I hope I did this video well enough to explain why cheat meals are necessary. I just hope people don't kid themselves and feel like they need a cheat meal just because they're kind of hungry. Some people are born to be able to sacrifice and suffer. And once some people can't have their, they see the people around them eating the food and they feel like they, and they can't have it. They feel like that's suffering. But so don't kid yourself and give yourself a cheat meal because you feel like your diet is dull and bland or whatever. These are useful tools for keeping fat loss when you're trying to get extremely lean. And if you cut these out, if you try to fight it, your body's gonna win. Your body is smarter than you. We elevate ourselves so much, but there's so much about the body we don't even know yet. And you think we're just some bodybuilders are just gonna outwork our body. You want to work with your body. You want to work smarter, not just work hard and just push through it. So you can listen to your body too. When you're gonna need these cheat meals, because if you've dieted like this, when you just feel like you can't even function throughout the day. So listen to your body. Utilize these cheat meals, smart. These carb loads smart, and you should be able to make better progress. Because if you feel like, I need to get leaner, so I'm gonna cut out cheat meals, you're just going in the wrong direction, I feel. So hopefully this video helped, and I don't know if any questions, you can leave comments or whatever. There's almost an infinite amount of depth you can get into with this stuff if you want to get into the the way the entire body works and flows with endocrine system and physiology and stuff. But I try not to go too crazy, and I don't understand the deepest, darkest parts of all this. But I have a good concept of the body physiology enough to hopefully explain it, keep it simple and useful. So any questions, just leave it in the comments, and hopefully I can answer it. All right, thanks. So here's this diagram I kind of drew up, which is how I kind of would visualize it in my head to memorize it. As you can see on the left, as calories decrease through carbohydrate reduction, typically, this lowers leptin, which has an effect on increasing cortisol, which has an effect on decreasing thyroid, and then the combination of the two, leptin has a direct increase on thyroid, which all those together are contributed to a decrease in fat loss and energy expenditure going down. Is when you have a carb load or a cheat meal, this increases your calorie intake, like I suggest, through carbohydrate increase. This carbohydrate increase will increase leptin, being that leptin is fluctuated by calorie expenditure and a lot by glucose carbohydrate intake. The carbohydrates themselves will also decrease cortisol. The increase in leptin will also decrease cortisol. Carbs will help synthesize T3 hormone. With cortisol being low, thyroid won't be suppressed to do this as well. So it's all, again, all interconnected. It's all elevated to a positive benefit. And then this will put you into a good position for fat burning again, until these mechanisms kick back in again when you go back under diet, and then you just keep repeating this cycle.